Welcome back to this special edition of Indianomics. I've been speaking to Lord Nicholas Stern and Lord Adair Turner. Well, Lord Stern, my point is all this effort towards climate change, do you think it can get stymied because of the way US has walked out of several climate conventions?
I think actually the world has passed the Trump test. I was in Paris and very much part of putting that agreement together in 2015. In the autumn of the next year, that was COP21 Paris. In the autumn of the next year was COP22 in Marrakesh, and the US election was just before that, a few days before that. Person after person stood up, country after country, China, India, countries around the world, Europe, said, we get on with the job. We get on with the job because this is the growth story of the 21st century. Do you want cities where you can move and breathe? You know, do you want ecosystems which are strong, robust, fruitful? Yes, the answer to that is yes. Do you worry about the impact of climate change? Yes. So they stood up and said, that's where we're going. We continue. If you look inside the United States, you see cities, states, firms getting on with it. Yes. Now, I'm not saying that this was helpful. It's not helpful. It's a problem. But on the whole, the world is just getting on with it.
Just to speak about the trade wars itself,
yep.
Do you worry that the way in which we are having this one-upmanship and tweets coming from China and, more importantly, President Trump, that global growth itself could get stymied? We've just seen it off the long slowdown.
Well, I think what's happened is that the recovery from the financial crisis of 2008 has taken far longer and has required far more policy stimulus than anybody would have dreamed back in 2008. And it's therefore very important for us to think about what that tells us about some structural characteristics of the modern economy, which only seem to keep going if we have global interest rates close to zero. We now have the threat of these tariff wars. I think until recently, my own attitude was, you know, it's going to calm down. And I think in particular, the initial Chinese reaction was a very clever bit of classic game theory where you want to calm something down. Was somebody else hits you, you hit them, but slightly lighter, which is a signaling device to say, let's calm this down. What has happened, I think, recently, despite that reaction initially from the Chinese and from the Europeans and others, is that America and the Trump administration has upped the ante on this. So there is a danger that this could, you know, now get out of control. My gut feel, my most reasonable expectation is that this is not going to spin into a serious downturn in the global economy. If it did, there would be a concern. I mean, the big concern is if we had a slowdown in the global economy overall now, what are we going to do to offset that? Because we've already got interest rates close to zero. You know, we don't have our classic tools available. There are actually tools that you can still use in that, and it's something I've written about, but it's challenging because you're into unconventional tools. So it is a moment of risk, and I think what is required is for other countries apart from the US, they do have to respond. The Europeans have been very careful, very clever in a way, of working out how to respond in a way which hits, you know, Trump's own supporters, you know, worse. It's not clear that President Trump responds to that. You know, I mean, we've seen this extraordinary stuff where Harley-Davidson is now saying they are going to move production from the US in order not to be hit by the European tariffs. Perfectly reasonable thing for them to do when their own president has harmed their economic interests by his behavior. But now, of course, Trump is attacking Harley-Davidson for doing that. I don't know whether rationality is going to come about, but I think it's very important for the whole of the rest of the world in response to this approach to, you know, act as calmly as possible. One does have to respond. You can't just have somebody impose tariffs on them and not respond. But so far, I would still be in the camp of believing that this isn't going to spiral into a big downturn in the global economy. But it's a moment of risk.
I appreciate you're out of time, but your last word on this tariffs, do you think it can...
I think it is a risk. It is a risk. It's a risk to growth, but I hope that reason will prevail. President Trump will, I hope, start to understand that he's harming his core support, he's harming US manufacturers, he's harming US agriculturalists and farmers. those are the people who are going to get hit in the United States, and I hope that he will understand that. At the same time, it's very important that the other countries, particularly Europe, where we come from, but other countries around the world, respond in a way which is compatible with the rules of the WTO. Because basically, over the medium term, we have to live with a rules-based international system. And the test of whether we live within a rules-based international system is whether, at times of crisis, you use it. Now, President Trump is not using it in any serious way, in fact, is in violation in my view. But others should respond in a way, and they can respond in a way which is within the WTO. That way, they invest in the medium term and the strength of that system.
All right. Lord Stern and Lord Turner, thank you very much for joining me. And we do hope that when we meet at the next AIIB meeting, there is a little more of private capital that is invested in infrastructure, that the coal energy problem in India is a little more resolved, and perhaps trade tariffs will not be a discussion that we have to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Great.